Hey guys, Chris the Ultimate Recycler. It's not Wednesday, but I'm getting ready for next week when I'll be away at the farm. So let's do another unboxing from the emergency storage shed. My workbench here is empty. Let's go and find something to unbox and make a mess on our bench. Now, the last episode of an unboxing from the emergency storage shed, I said, what do you want to do next? And I think Glenn was the only one that replied and said, how about some old tools and rusty stuff? So this box or this box. We might even do both. Depends how quickly we get through them. So let's start with this one. We'll take it through to the bench now. Oh, incidentally, those who did have a guess at what this is were absolutely spot on. Dean and Luke and someone else, I forget, all identified it or thought it was an early valve grinder. It is, and it's quite an old one, and I don't know what to do with it. Part of me wants to restore it, but then how much use will I have for it? And I'll probably have to get grinding wheels for it. It's seized up there. I believe the garage it came from was a local garage, and I believe they had a nasty fire. And by looking at this insulation, I think this has been burnt. So it could be a major restoration. I don't know if I want to go down that path because I won't have that much use for it. Don't know. Let me know your thoughts underneath. All right, let's get back to this box. So what's making this so heavy? Well, obviously we've got some serious metal in the top here. This is a little hand crank bench grinder, and I get a lot of these. I don't know if it's going to work or not. Might be seized up. Yeah, it doesn't feel like... Oh, that's just spinning on the shaft. So I think the gearing's seized. I do get a lot of these, and they quite often work fine. You just screw them to the edge of your bench and crank away, and you can sharpen your scissors or your chisels when the power goes out. But then, of course, back then, not everyone had electricity, especially on the farms. So I think this one's purely an ornament. It's not worth pulling apart and trying to fix up because I get them quite often in good operational condition, and I only get about $30 for them. So I reckon we'll just maybe tighten that nut up so it doesn't fall off. I might give it a quick wash. And well, I reckon we'll still probably get $20 for it as a nice old vintage ornament. I'll do a notepad at the end of this box because there's going to be some pretty good value. How are these for a couple of beautiful old hinges? They're absolute rippers. They're different lengths. Oh no, maybe they go that way. Absolutely fantastic hinges. They're like a malleable steel. They look like a cast iron, but they wouldn't be cast because there's no way known you would hang a heavy door off a piece of cast iron only that wide. It would snap off. So I think these are they're called a malleable steel. They're probably cast and then tempered so they're not so brittle. There are some numbers cast into it. It looks like P20 and P21. I don't know what they indicate. I don't know who made them, but they are absolutely beautiful old hinges. I would love to put them on an old gate here or something. I'll give them a quick wash up just with some... I don't think I'll buff them up with a wire wheel. I think I'll just give them a bit of a scrub in hot soapy water with some steel wool. They'll have a beautiful patina. They don't need to be shined up. And I reckon they're at least $50. Where do you find other hinges like this? Yep, so we'll give those a clean up. I'll show you at the end of the video. And we'll add that to the price list. Now here's another early piece. That's another piece of hardware. It's a vintage latch. And I think these latches were used on older houses. You often had a little, above your front door, you often had a little window that was on hinges that could allow you to open it a little bit to let airflow through. And I think this was the sort of latch they would have used because you could have a rope or a chain on this to operate it from down below. Correct me if I'm wrong, it may have had multiple uses, but that's still in beautiful operating condition. Again, I'll give that a little bit of a clean up, but I'm not going to polish it or anything, and I reckon we'll get $10 for that. What a nice little latch. It's probably English made. Okay, we have a bit of other modern stuff in here. There's a fairly modern ball pump. Doesn't sound too healthy inside. And it still pumps air. I'm just going to put that in the $1 box at the shop. Here we have a... tangled in wire. Here we have an old petrol bowser. What do they call it? A hand nozzle. A nozzle. And I think it's a Gilbarco, if I remember correctly. It looks like it says Barco on the end, which were quite a well-known brand in Australia anyway for petrol Bowsers, and they made the nozzles. This is quite an early one. It's got GB on the top, which might have been Gilbarco Brothers, or maybe GB is Gilbarco. I don't know. I'm sure you petrol collecting guys will know that. This is I think that might be brass. This part appears to be probably cast alloy. I've seen much chunkier ones all in brass that can get pretty good dollars, $100 odd or so on eBay. I don't think this one's quite that good. I think I will give this one a bit of a buff up. I'll probably take the clamp and the old bit of hose off the end. And I reckon that's still probably going to get, maybe $40 or $50 if it cleans up well. We'll see how that turns out. I better have a pile for cleaning up. Okay, what's next? A pair of scissors. Well, we actually need some in the shed here. I think the last one's the handle broke, so they can go in the gardening drawer. We have a plastic version of a wooden spoon. Nice for stirring up things if we're making up a fertiliser batch for the garden or something, got to dissolve something in a bucket of water. I think I'll put that in the gardening cupboard. Quite a modern little saw that's obviously clearly rusted. It's possibly only a kid's saw, or it's very coarse. It's probably a pruning saw actually. It's too sharp to be a kid's toy. It's probably still okay for pruning, It feels very sharp on the teeth. It certainly doesn't matter that it's a bit surface rusty. So we have a good selection of pruning saws here, so I'll just put this in the $1 box at the shop. That $1 box is a great way of getting rid of stuff. Here we have a pretty heavy-duty coal chisel. I mentioned in one of my recent videos that they mushroom over at the top, and they become a little bit dangerous to use. In fact, that one's even lost a piece that's probably flown off as shrapnel, so that really should be ground back. And the last time I mentioned that, someone in the comments said, please do not sell it to someone unwary that might injure themselves, and that's a fair point. But I think anyone that picks one of these out of a $1 box and is going to use it will know that it probably should be ground back, and I'm certainly happy to point it out to them. Probably just a $1 box again. Some cast iron. So this box was heavy because there was a lot of cast iron pieces in here. I think this is one of a pair of brackets that held a cast iron wash basin screwed to the wall. I think that's what it is. I've seen similar before. I don't think it's got much practical use, although in saying that, how good would that be just screwed to the side of the shed to hang the garden hose on? So I think we'll now call it a garden hose hanger, and I might put $5 on it. I don't think we need one here, but I'm sure someone else does. So that's $5. Here we have an old carpenter's hammer. It's been around the traps a bit. It's a fiberglass handle. It still looks intact. The rubber grip's starting to fall off it. I always look at the carpenter's hammers. I look at where you pull the nails out, because they often chip out, and then they're really not much good for pulling nails out. This one's actually not bad. I don't think it's a particularly good brand, but I might just buff the head up just to make sure, because if it says Cyclone or Estwing or something like that, you're going to get some pretty good dollars for it. But being a fiberglass handle, it's probably just an unbranded one. We'll clean it up and see. Something else for the garden, perhaps in our garden cupboard here. These are actually really handy if you're a bottle collector. Like a few of you know that I've done a fair bit of bottle collecting in my time. These little rakes are really good for just pulling through the broken glass and stuff in an old dump. And you can often find little bottles that you would normally miss with the shovel. And the advantage is that you're not sticking your hands in and cutting your fingers to shreds on glass, although you should use gloves, of course. But that can go in the gardening cupboard here. I'm sure Christine will use that in the garden. More gardening stuff. We have some shears. They actually feel really good. I'm not sure if she needs more shears, but they feel quite nice. So I'll put them in the drawer here. We're getting a bit of gardening stuff. There's more. We're getting some good gardening stuff in this lot. So they're just a straight cutting type secateurs, I guess. I'll put them in the drawer as well, and if we end up with too many, I'll take some to the shop. That's part of a latch. I wonder if the other part's in here. Here we have some tin snips. They're quite surface rusty, but they seem like they operate okay. I might give them a little bit of a clean up. If they come up better, we'll get $5 for them. Otherwise, I'll just go in the $1 box. A part of an old desk lamp. Well, it's a complete desk lamp, but it's got it needs a good chiropractor. Cast iron base, pretty rusty. Bit of a strange, dodgy sort of pivot there that's done up tight and it won't move. The gooseneck part, and I don't know if it's broken or just become unscrewed at the top here. Yeah, you know what? I reckon we could still get that back to operational condition. Probably going to need a new cord. It still does have a plug on it, but I think the cord's a bit far gone. But let's see if we can put that back together. I probably won't worry for this video. Maybe I'll do a quick restoration video on this desk lamp and see if we can turn it back into something that can sell. I'll do a separate video on that soon, and if I put it in my road in the shed, I'll have to get onto it. And if you guys comment saying, when are you going to do that desk lamp, that'll prompt me to do it. Getting to the bottom of the box, we have an old bread knife. I sometimes keep these around for cutting up the white polystyrene boxes for packaging. The bread knives actually slice through the polystyrene very well. So I might hang on to that one because I don't think I have one here. We have an old extension cord that's clearly been in the weather a long time. So I'm just going to cut the plugs off that, and that's going in our mid-grade wire bin. We have a mash hammer. I've got one of these over on my anvil. They're a very handy hammer, these. They pack a real punch, especially when you don't have a lot of swinging room. So Ian Matthews, if you're watching, you like your ommers and you don't have a lot of swinging room. So do you have a mash hammer? I know you use a brick hammer. So that one, I don't need another one here. I'm just going to put that one in the shop for $5. It should sell pretty quickly. More gardening tools. These ones feel a bit rough. I think they can just go in the $1 box at the shop. A little piece of aluminium pipe that's probably from a TV antenna. It's been cut up. So just aluminium, go into my domestic aluminium bin. A little Bakelite switch. Seems to work quite well. I get $5 for these little switches all the time in the shop. And I had one guy buy some just purely for memories. He remembered from his childhood, wherever he grew up, obviously was an old house, and he remembered that spring-loaded clunk sound of the light switches, and it brought back memories, and I think he bought 3 or 4 switches just based on that. So we might just give it a little bit of a spray. It seems to be not clunking quite cleanly, but other than that, it looks to be in pretty reasonable condition. Oh, there's a loose screw in there. Oh, that's just come out of the terminal. That's probably why it wasn't clunking properly. That's much better. So we'll put that back together. $5 for the shop. Okay, any wonder this box was heavy. We have another grinder. Another hand crank grinding mechanism. Very dirty, this one. I wonder if this one works. No, it's seized up as well. Now it does turn. We could possibly drop a bit of oil in the holes and free it up. Oh yeah, I think it will go. We might do that. We'll squeeze a bit of oil in there and see if we can get it to go in a minute. Down the bottom of the box, we just have a little standard garden hose fitting. We have a box of those here in our shed. Again, the gardening section. A random spring, for which I have a jar in here labelled random springs. A couple of screwdrivers. And I do have plenty around, so when I get too many, I usually just put them in the $1 a pick box at the shop. And it's amazing how often people come in and grab a whole handful of screwdrivers, and they'll want to leave some in their ute, some in their car, some in their truck. So $1 each adds up quite quickly. The last thing in the bottom of this box is very heavy. And I did a video involving this a long time ago, and I'll link it up above. And this is what I made. It's actually a kangaroo mold. So any who hasn't haven't been in my channel for a long time would never have seen this. I bought this at a garage sale many years ago, and I don't know what it was for, but it's an imprint of a Kangaroo. It's got a bit rusty. I'll better buff it up. And I did an experiment on pouring aluminium, which I melted in a furnace in the back of my shop. Well, I actually just used a wood fire, and we actually made this cast aluminium Kangaroo. And I had ideas of modifying this to be able to make Kangaroo doorstops and then sell them through the shop. So I must investigate that further once I get my shed more organised. So that was the first and only attempt I had at moulding a Kangaroo. And yeah, well, it kind of worked. Not bad for a prototype. That's heavy. I've got to put that down. There we go. We've finished the box. So I'll clean up a few things and we'll have a bit of a discussion and we'll get out the notepad. Alright guys, it's taken me a few days to get back to this, but let's sort out what we had in this tub. I've given things a bit of a clean up and we'll go through them and have a bit of a look at the notepad. Alright, let's start. These are in no particular order. I will be doing something with that lamp, and I was thinking it should kind of just fix up and clean up okay as it is, but there's two holes on the base. It looks like they may be threaded. I don't know. They go right through and it's a solid cast iron base, so it's fairly heavy. I don't know what would have been there, and I don't know what I could put there because it's going to look incomplete with just holes there. So if you've got any suggestions, I don't know, maybe a little chromed stand to hold your mobile phone or something. I don't know. We'll come up with something, I'm sure. Right, let's go through the rest of it. I did give this grinder a bit of a clean up, this hand crank grinder. I didn't bother trying to pull it apart to get it going. It's still actually seized solid, but it would be easy enough for someone to get going because it's not broken. It's just the gearing will be seized up inside. And we'll go through the prices in a tick. This one actually cleaned up really well. I did clean it up and it looks pretty good, and it cranks absolutely beautiful. You can see there, just really nicely geared. You could seriously clamp this to your workbench and use it. So I think I upped the price on that to about $35. The hinges just cleaned up nicely. As I said, wasn't going to polish them. Just some steel wool in warm soapy water, and it just brings the metal up really nicely. I love those hinges. I'm tempted to keep them, but I'm trying to make some tough decisions here. The mash hammer I buffed up, and I upped the price to 10 on this because it's actually a Cyclone branded one. 2.5 pound Cyclone mash hammer, so I think we'll get 10 for that. The other hammer, as suspected, there was no branding on it, but it's in pretty good condition, but we'll sell that just for $5. The tin snips, I think, ended up being made in Taiwan, which suggests they'd possibly be 1980s. I didn't go to too much trouble to clean them up, but they actually work fine. We'll just put $5 on those. The switch, once I replaced the screw and gave it a little bit of a lube, works brilliantly. There's our insulated wire. The plugs will just go to the e-waste. There's about $2 worth of insulated wire there. Various other bits of scrap metal. And our recently named garden hose hanger, I just gave it a bit of a wash, so at least it was clean in the shop. Same with that latch. The Petrol Bowser nozzle, I did look up Gilbarco just for my interest, and it was a company started by a Mr. Gilbert and a Mr. Barker in the States in about 1870, I think, from memory. So obviously they weren't designing and making petrol pump parts back then, but they did have something to do with the fuel industry. I think, if I remember correctly, they were doing something with petroleum vapor for gas lighting or something or other. Anyway, that's where Gilbarco came from. This one, I didn't clean it up too much. I just buffed up the easy to get areas. It's quite pitted in places. It's clearly been lying in dirt. The aluminium's fairly pitted. It moves, but it's not in the best condition. I'll put that in the shop though, I think, for $60, and I think we'll get that. Someone will use it just as a prop to go with the restored Petrol Bowser or something. It would clean up better. The Kangaroo mould, I just cleaned up and buffed up the rust out of it. And I will be maybe doing some experimenting with that in the future, so let me know your thoughts there. And we just had a few items here in the $1 tub. I couldn't find anything to go with that latch thing, so they can just go in the $1 box. So it brings us to our prices. Did anyone have any guesses at what they thought the value would be? Well, the hinges and the fuel nozzle were the best bits. I put $35 in the other crank grinder, so it gave us a total of just over $200. And we still have the gardening stuff, which I've left in the shed here. The lamp as a project, mind you, it's not really worth anything in the state it's in. And the Kangaroo mould, well, how would you put a price on that? I'm not going to sell it before you ask. I am going to keep that because I want to do some experiments. Maybe I could make some Kangaroo door stops with the Ultimate Recycler somehow cast into it. Might be getting a bit involved for my casting skills, given that that's the best example I've got. But anyway, there we go. Over $200 plus a few other bits in one little tub. It's just amazing where the value's hiding in this shed. So there you go, guys. Another box sorted, some more value for the shop, and a few things that I'm going to keep. So this video will be out whilst I'm at the farm. I'm leaving tomorrow, but you'll see that during the week, or you'll see this during the week. I'm trying to really stick to this one item per week out of the emergency storage shed. I know I've started a few other commitments, but I probably won't necessarily get to those every week. But the emergency storage shed was the first one that I said, yes, one item every week. And we're going to stick with it because that's where I need to create the most space. But someone did suggest, and apologies because I forget who, but someone did suggest that my priorities really should have this shed as number one, because this is where I do a lot of my repair work. And by not having this functional, it is holding up some projects. So I kind of agree with that. So I'm going to make a concerted effort when I'm back from the farm to clean off that workbench that you often see me pan across and it's just piled with stuff, and try and get a bit more functionality happening here. So that's the plan. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye for now.